Well, it is my great pleasure once again to host Ali Cook, who has been doing some marvelous work. I interviewed Ali, I don't know, was it about a year ago, Ali?
I think so. It would be a
Yeah,
year ago.
great
Yep.
interview then. And you're a musician, among many other things, producer, and a stalwart fighter against what I can only describe as this massive wave of the infliction of misery on people and untruth and medical malpractice and governmental malpractice. So it's a pleasure for me to talk to you again and to hear about the new series, The Tribute, and anything else you want to talk about. Uh, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you
Good.
absolutely well.
Okay.
Good evening.
So, yeah, good evening. So the floor is yours. Before we begin, I want to make sure that our audience knows that we're not practicing medicine, we're not practicing law, we're all we're doing is having a conversation, okay? An intelligent conversation and an interesting conversation, which I hope many people will listen to. So, Ali, tell our audience, tell me again who you are, what you've been involved in, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, I'm a mum. That's the first thing. And live rurally in New Zealand, down in Motueka, musician and promoter, like you said, and publicist. So all my life, pretty much my working life, I've worked with getting people onto radio and television and into newspapers and getting articles and pitching and getting articles and stuff. And so
Great.
that's been my daytime gig, which has allowed me to work in the entertainment industry basically full time because I do those things. But so my son was injured, and yeah, and we've been through this. Oh, I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like a an altered reality that you never would have if someone had told you before COVID that this would have happened.
Well, you say your
Um,
son was injured. Your son was injured by the jab.
yeah, yep. So he had one jab. I tried to talk him out of it. I didn't want him to do it. There was a lot of pressure on the young and a lot of advertising. Two shots for summer and all that. But he was going to lose his job, and he just shifted to Cromwell and got a house, and he was going to lose everything if he didn't do it.
Right.
So he did it, and 4 hours later he ended up in Ashburton Hospital. So he was driving along. He thought he was going to be all right. Then he started to notice chest pains, and he ended up calling Healthline, and they told him to pull the truck over. He was on the stage of like a 58-ton truck, belting down the highway, heading from Cromwell to Christchurch. He was just outside of Ashburton. So he pulled it to the opposite side of the road because that was the only place he could find a grass verge. And the ambulance people kind of brought him down out of the truck. He waited there till the ambulance people came. And they took him to Ashburton Hospital, and that's where the nightmare began, really.
So,
Um,
Ali, what were his symptoms? What happened when he was driving? What happened to him?
so he just started getting chest pain. He just started describing it as going up his neck and across his shoulder, and his left shoulder actually, and up his neck, and just he could, feel his heart beating out of his chest and out of his neck. That's how he first sort of, and just extreme pain. And by the time he got there, he just couldn't breathe. He said it felt like it was an elephant on his chest.
Oh my gosh.
And he got rolled in on the hospital gurney, and the doctor leaned over him and said, "Don't let this put you off your second shot." And that was the opening line. Great bedside manner, not. And that's what they did. They leaned over him and said that. And then they discharged him. They did an ECG.
So that
They
was
didn't
that
do any.
was so that
They
was an
didn't.
acknowledgement that that was a reaction to the jab then,
Well, I guess it.
right?
I guess it was
Think of it
because
that
of
way. It had to be. Yeah.
obviously the ambulance had told him he'd been vaccinated that day, and he collapsed in the truck, and that was that
Yeah.
was the doctor's decision to open with that statement. And yeah, I mean, he had blood, and we knew he had blood in ECGs, and they said it was normal, and they said he had anxiety, and off he went with his girlfriend to Christchurch. Um, Very luckily, his doctor that we use here in Nelson is an integrative doctor, and I rang him up and told him what had happened and booked a phone interview, a phone consult from to Christchurch from Mapua, and he put him on a whole lot of stuff, augmented NAC, hawthorn, vitamin D, like just and a set of anti-inflammatories as well. Gave him something there. But that was after he'd went into A&E in Christchurch next, and it was after that he did the phone consult. But A&E in Christchurch, they did an ECG, and they were quite dismissive as well. But the strange thing that happened there, that's of course his story features in the tribute, but you can't get everything in.
So
The strange thing.
tell us about the tribute. Tell people who don't know
Yeah,
about
so
it. What is the
I'll
tribute?
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tribute is basically testimonies of New Zealanders who've been fully diagnosed as vaccine injured. So it's a testimony, a real life testimony, and it's presented in a beautiful way. So it's been filmed beautifully. It's had a lot of AI graphics that are put through it to help to describe the story, and some music underneath it, and it's been presented in a short documentary form. So each one is one person for anywhere between 20 and 28 minutes, say, telling their story.
And
So that's
where could one view the tribute? I'll put a link in our description
so
box. Where
yeah,
can you do that?
absolutely. So at the Tribute NZ on YouTube, our the Tribute NZ.nz website, and on Facebook as well. Just look up the Tribute NZ or
Okay.
Google it, and it comes straight up now. Yeah,
And
so we're putting
by
out
the way, your son's episode came out about a week ago or a few days ago,
it did, and
and I
the
watched
trailer.
it.
Yeah, the trailer came out on Facebook, and it's had like 272,000 views on Facebook. The trailer has, and the YouTube, I think a couple of thousand on there, because it's not as much on YouTube as you get on the Facebook with native content. But yeah, so a lot of people have seen that. And so anyway, yeah, so going back to Christchurch Hospital, the bit that's not in there is a doctor said to him, "Oh, you should never have a vaccine again without having a crash cart next to you," was what he said to him, right? And then afterwards, I wrote back to that doctor and I said, "Can you put that in writing, please? Because it doesn't seem to be in his notes, so that we can talk to his doctor, and as if he was going to get a second one." But of course, he wasn't going to get a second one. I just wanted to see if he'd put in writing what he'd said, because I was already hearing that they weren't putting test results in writing. So, and he wrote back and denied he'd ever said it. Yet he'd said it in front of my son and his girlfriend. And they're like, "What? He did say that. Then he just denied it. Roll forward, he takes the truck. Tim, our doctor, actually prescribes him some stuff with the consult. Then he heads back to Cromwell, and he gets there and his chest starts hurting again, and he heads off to Queenstown Hospital this time. And they do a echocardiogram there and an ECG and a troponin blood test. But they say that's all normal and there's nothing wrong with them, and it must be anxiety, and it's just a big, immune reaction. That's what it is, kind of deal. And he went through like a year of that. Our own doctor believed us, but the EDs were terrible. And then he went in on Christmas Eve. On Christmas Eve, he was here, and then he went in Christmas Eve into Nelson Hospital again, and that and they called it something pleurisy or not. Some thought it was something like that. Basically dismissed him again, and then the next night he was heading off to a party down in Twizel, and they'd driven off down there with the four-wheel drive club, and he's ended up spending his New Year's Eve back in Ashburton Hospital where he'd been a year before. And then he carried on. We were just going through the doctor. Basically he was swallowing Nurofen the whole time, and I had him on some natural kind of stuff that we got through our own integrative doctor. And then he tried a thing called low dose natroxen, which was like really, really low. Yeah. So we tried that, which was like made by a pharmacist in Auckland, and it was really tiny dose. So tried doing that. Sort of seemed to calm a bit with that. But then he get another flare up, and then he was just driving his truck along one day in 2023, and he got another attack and got pulled out of the ambulance and by an ambulance in Murchison and taken to Nelson Hospital. Um, and it was there that the guy went, well, I can't see anything, but he said, because you've presented so many times in an ED, I'm actually going to get the duty cardiologist in here.
Good.
Right. Well, the duty cardiologist comes in and takes one look at the ECG and says, you got pericarditis. And then he looks at all the he looks back on a couple of other ECGs, but he couldn't see the ones from the time of the accident. But I didn't sort of take that in because we got a diagnosis, and so he put him on colchicine, which is a drug that's given for pericarditis. And then we put a referral in. Our local doctor had put a referral in for a cardiologist, and he'd sent him for an echocardiogram for that to land with the cardiologist appointment. And by this time, we were starting to get into ACC. We were starting to apply for ACC, and they wouldn't pay for a cardiologist, but they paid for their own cardiologist to fight ours. But anyway, we were left with no choice but to go private. So we just thought, we'll bite the bullet, and we're going to have to go private and do it. And when he went to that cardiologist, was then a Dr. Lily down in Christchurch was helping us with their ACC, and her and the cardiologist at the same time went, I can't see any of his test results from the day of the vaccine or those 3 visits afterwards. They're not on his record.
Really?
And we went, what do you mean they're not on the record? She said, I don't want to look at somebody else's notes. I need to see the actual test results. I need to see the ECGs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And she said, they're not there. And well, then Dr. Lily went looking, and we all started, we launched an investigation with her help. We launched this investigation for Bailey. And they found the one in Christchurch in an off-site storage facility, not even on the hospital, like in an off-site storage facility.
You're talking about the electrocardiogram itself?
ECG, and it positively showed that he had pericarditis the day after the vaccine. And then Ashburton never found the ECG at all. Like they never found theirs. But unfortunately for them, we snuck around and found the ambulance one. And the ambulance one showed he had pericarditis within 6 hours of the vaccine.
So how do you explain what happened?
So basically those doctors looked at ECGs, and they either didn't see the ST, I now know it's called ST elevation and PR depression, and they're the little waves when you get those for the listeners, when you get those.
No, but how do you explain,
even though you're the doc,
how do you explain the absence of the record, the electrocardiogram? I mean,
I don't
that's
know,
a medical
because
record. That's sacrosanct.
Queenstown also lost his records. So now we're 3 hospitals without his records, and one hospital which has now broken the law because that hospital has lost the ECG. So the hospital that greeted him with the guy that leaned over the top of him, that ECG didn't get uploaded to his medical records and has completely disappeared. So I'm looking at my options over that because I'm doing a complaint to the Health and Disability Commission with everything that's happened to him.
That's a breach of basic medical practice and hospital practice, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's an absolute breach. So anyway, so then we go looking for the doctor goes looking for he goes, why haven't you been to the cardiologist yet? And he goes looking for the referral, and it's on his system and it's disappeared off the hospital system. So my son's referral to a cardiologist and the electrocardiogram the doctor sent him to get landed nowhere because somebody went and removed the referral from the hospital system, dumped his referral.
I mean, Ali, as you know, I worked in the hospital system here for many years, actually. And everything that I did was recorded electronically. We had notes that were preserved, paper and also electronic records, etc. Referrals were documented. Everything was documented. How do you not document something if you do something? I mean,
Well,
this is
how do you
a
document something that completely contravenes the test results? Because we're talking about
yeah,
three hospitals, three ECGs
yeah,
that show the ST elevation and PR depression that is consistent with pericarditis. Because apparently there's a different shape for myocarditis to what there is for
right,
pericarditis. So, and I mean, it may be that that's also a specialist role to
yeah.
actually do that, but the doctors that I was working with, Dr. Lily could see it. She could see that, other GPs could see it. So,
So in conjunction with this symptom, presenting symptoms and an EKG that has some anomalies, and maybe you're not so good at reading EKGs, but you do what you need to do, like that doctor there, I guess Queenstown, where he referred him, he got the specialist to say, take a look at this, right?
yeah, that was in Nelson actually.
Nelson,
That was
sorry,
when he came
Nelson.
out of the ambulance for the
Okay.
second time,
Yeah.
like, and that was like over a year. That was over a year, nearly 2 years later after
So
the vaccine.
he still has the signs of this. He still has
Oh
pericarditis.
yeah, he still
This is
is down
ongoing.
to
Yeah.
he is down to about 3 attacks a month. Mm. So not that put him in hospital at the moment, but um, that make him wake him up in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. Um,
And his story is on the in the Tribute. He's got a I just saw the
yep, his
episode.
story
It's a
was last week in the
right.
Tribute, and
A great episode. He's great. You're great in that too, by the way. You give a beautiful
thank
interview.
you. Yeah, he
Um,
really has a good cardiologist now,
yeah.
and she, although I won't name her because I just as much as our good doctors that have stood up against this narrative. I also am into protecting the good doctors that are still in the system, if you know what I mean. I don't trust the system that much that I sort of feel like I have to protect her. Um, it's kind of like whether she thinks she needs protecting or not, because she's diagnosed my son with vaccine-induced pericarditis. Um, and I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
what
So she
she
might
even
be.
went
So you're
through.
saying she might be targeted by
Oh,
somebody.
I'm scared that she will
Yeah.
be. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I don't know
So
whether
this
she
is
will be, but like that's how it leaves you
well,
feeling. That's
let
how
me
I,
stop. Maybe stop a minute. Listen. I spoke to you before we began our interview for a minute, and I told you about what the Medical Council of New Zealand is doing to the relatively few doctors who spoke
oh
up
my
and did
gosh.
good
Yeah.
thing. They're still holding them in front of tribunals, levying fines, giving them harsher judgments. Dr. Conlon now is going through one up in
Yeah.
I think Rotorua. Another doctor. Dr. Wheeler was just in the
Yes.
tribunal. They levied a terrible judgment against her. So they're in a witch hunt to get people who actually just stood up and practiced good medicine.
Yeah.
Just to remind you, I said from the start, there was never a need for a vaccine, a jab of any sort for this illness, this whatever this thing was. There was never a need for it, okay? It was
Yeah.
introduced. You made the very important point that it was introduced into New Zealand before we had any need for, before even COVID got here, pretty much. I mean,
And
it's absurd.
that is why New Zealand and Australia's data in the future is so very, very important, because in other countries they could fob off, I think, the vaccine
Oh yeah,
reactions
they can say
as
it's COVID,
COVID.
long COVID,
But
extra long COVID, eternal
and they
COVID, the whole
couldn't
thing.
do that in
Yeah.
New Zealand because people were getting jabs into their arms before any COVID had of
So
any sort of
let's
quantity
go back to
arrived.
basics, okay? The Medical Council sent out a letter in 2019 making sure that all doctors knew they had to provide informed consent for everybody, lest they actually jeopardize their own status with the criminal justice system. Really, it was that strong. It was like, this is your duty. You have to provide informed consent. Shortly
Yeah,
thereafter, all of a sudden, informed consent when it came to the jab disappears and you're
yeah.
punished.
Well, my son was never warned.
You're told not to say anything negative about this thing. They completely upended 2,000 years of medical practice, medical principles, okay? To foist this untested thing on a whole population that was surrounded by 10,000 miles of ocean and was a perfect place to just sort of sit tight, find out what this thing was, treat it properly as you would in a normal, any kind of normal situation involving infectious disease, viral, and instead they did the opposite. They created an apartheid society. They brainwashed, I don't know, 95% of the population here. Maybe that's an overestimation. They brainwashed a lot of people. They divided families.
82.4%, 82.4% of the eligible population over 12 years of age got vaccinated. 82.4.
82.4%, which is
Yeah,
astonishing, which is absolutely
yeah.
astonishing. There was
They had
never,
two shots,
yeah,
82.4%.
which is it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking. I
It
can give you
is.
many examples. I know a nurse who got myocarditis, a local nurse here, a young person in her 30s.
Yep.
Okay?
We know lots.
I know a dentist who got severe myocarditis. He had his cardiologist apply for an exemption with so-called Dr. Bloomfield, who denied his exemption.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. No,
Which is
they were
absurd.
denying
How do you
exemptions.
deny an exemption to somebody who's had a severe reaction to something? It makes no sense. Why are you foisting this damaging, deleterious, terrible thing on people? I mean, that's
It's
what we have to
just,
answer. And then we have the COVID inquiry here, which
oh,
which I knew from the beginning was going to be
yeah,
completely corrupt
whitewash.
and yeah, useless, really.
It's
And
beyond whitewash. The only useful thing out of it is that little bit where they've got caught with their undies down over a tag meeting and the thing that the politicians are having a go at each other over, but they're like way not even over the target. They're talking
um,
about recommendations from the December tag meeting,
what is TAG? Describe what TAG is for
a
people. Technical
technical
advisory group.
advisory
Yeah.
group. So technical advisory group. So they're arguing because the inquiry mentioned a December piece of paper that um, didn't make it, so-called didn't make it to Chris Hipkins and Aisha Verrall, but in Parliament, National has been saying it did make it, right? And they're all about this December thing, but just scroll back to the August meeting, which is what I've been going on about. And the August meeting, it says they basically suppress it. They basically suppress the information, and they request that I'm just going to roll. I'm going to read it for the listeners because
Yeah,
I think
please.
that it's really I'll just pull it up. Just bear with me. Um, Basically, somebody from above, somebody ordered and said this. It was requested that references to increasing dosing intervals, potentially providing protection from myocarditis, be removed from communications. This has been actioned. Okay, so that's what they said in the August meeting, and then they redacted that. So I have the unredacted version and I have the redacted version because they must have gone, oh, cover our tracks. So they basically, somebody, and so I have asked now the Ministry of Health and an OIA for all communication between Ian Town and Ashley Bloomfield that mentions the word myocarditis. I've asked for between July and August, so basically the month and before there, just to see if I can see Bloomfield going, you know what, we're doing 2 shots for summer. Let's just not have that in the
So
communications
what, how
because
do
I
you,
think
why,
that's really what
so
happened.
Ali, how do you explain this entire establishment going so gung-ho for not just the jab, all these measures? I mean, everything they did was against true pandemic policy. How do you explain? How do you put it together? I've been writing about this. I have my own ideas. How do you put this thing together?
Well, you're the psychologist, right? So our population was brainwashed into thinking this was the only there was a conditioning going on and a group think going on,
But
and you'd
why
be
did
able
they
to
do
tell
it?
me.
Why did they do this? Why did they decide they were going to do this to our
It's
country?
global, it's Pfizer. It's World Health Organization. It's all those influencers that told them this is what you've got to do, this is what the rest of us are doing, this is what you've got to do. So they were all advised to do that. And there was groupthink within it. And then once people are in a groupthink, it's like a cult or a religious cult. Like
Yeah.
once they're in a groupthink, no amount of sensibility, it's going to take a lot to break them out of that.
Yeah.
There's that aspect. Then there's the aspect that if they go, oops, sorry, that they're going to be culpable for people's deaths and culpable for people's injuries, like my
Right.
son's, and deaths like Rory Nen's.
But weren't
Um,
then there were also incentives for people getting vaccinated, jabbed, weren't there? I mean, they put money through money at people.
yeah, there was
They
money,
shifted
incentives for
jabs,
chemists.
right?
Lots of chemists are quite rich, I hear.
Exactly. The pharmacists got a lot of money for doing this. They took it out of the doctor-patient relationship, just said the pharmacist is going to be able to do this kind of stuff.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
forced it on everybody. They silenced any doctors who stood
Yeah.
up to say anything about this. Literally, the many stories about the doctors who had to lose their licenses or deregistered and are still
Yeah.
being persecuted by the medical council. So, by the way, you listeners out here, if you're interested, go to the NZDSOS website and make a
Yeah.
contribution to help these people, help us because these people are being subjected to a witch hunt that is bankrupting them or trying to bankrupt them and hurting them and doing all kinds of things. And there aren't even that many when you think of it, but basically every single doctor who made a peep has been punished in some way.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, and that's why I put that, that's why it was in Bailey's episode, because of what I said in that interview in the tribute, um, was that I really think that the threats that went out from the medical council to doctors about informed consent, I really do think that scared some other doctors that are in the system that kept their head down, and then they could see the ones that were being made an
Oh
example
yeah.
of.
Yeah, of
And
course.
it
Yeah.
was like the woman that Patty Gowers tried to, I don't even think that was an apology actually. But she chased her down the street because she was giving exemptions that at the time were actually legal because they hadn't even gone to Ashley Bloomfield being the only one who could give an exemption. How ridiculous is that? Having one doctor to give an exemption
I
from
know. So they
medicines that
so
are
so
just,
the
but
so the fix that just tells you the fix was in. The agenda was set. They were
yeah,
on a mission to get this thing done. And the sad part of it, the very sad part of it is leave alone all the ridiculous masking, lockdown stuff. Leave that to one side. You still have the legacy of this jab that has, I think, horrific effects over time. And I said at the
yeah,
time, I spoke out against it right away. And I said in 2020 wasn't necessary, it was potentially dangerous, etc.
yeah,
And we wouldn't even know the full extent of it for years. For 7 to 10 years, you
no,
really see things come out. And so what we're seeing is an explosion of cancers. We're seeing an explosion of just misery. Everybody's sick all the time. I don't know, Allie, I'm out and about in Wellington all the time. Everybody's sick just about. I'm telling you, it's
wow,
like, and everybody's got to get their home, they're this or that, working from home again. Honestly, so you have that whole thing going on. You have people who've died from it who will go unreported, unremembered. And you
yeah.
have this legacy, people who've been injured, which Linda Wharton and you have been really working hard to bring to the
Yeah,
public
and
attention.
Gayleen, and that
And
and that's
Gayleen, of
what
course, yeah.
that's what the tribute, that's why we've made the tribute like it is. It's just like my one's is one of the only episodes where somebody else came into the picture other than the injured person, but
Yeah.
only because I've been tracking Bailey's story, and it wasn't until last week had he ever spoken out himself. So um it's kind of like the rest of them are all just them to the camera,
Yeah.
telling the
Okay.
camera what happened to them,
Yeah.
how it made them feel,
And Ali,
what they've been
you
through.
remember at Parliament when we put up the string of crosses to represent all the people who've been
Yeah.
harmed or killed by the darn thing. And you sang and I talked and we tried to bring attention to it, but it's been shoved under the rug by the establishment, by the government. There's no hint of any culpability. Uh, and yet, at the same time, the hopeful thing is that ACC is now in the picture and they've been compensating people in some way. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, so it's taken most people over, 2 years to fight. And this is the thing, like I've been pushing the ACC figures at the media. Nobody wants to report it. They don't want to report that we've paid actually nearly 19 million now, because what happened was the ACC figures, we were waiting for them to come out in January, and they came out, and we went down them and went, wait, there's no payouts for the deaths and there's no permanent injury claims in here. So I went back with an OIA, and lo and behold, the 6 people have been paid 1.2 million, which is not very much for 6 people who've been killed by this thing. If you if you split that up evenly, it still is not worth a life. And then you've got it was another 819,000 or something. So it took it from the figure that they'd announced, which was 6.88, to basically nearly 19, just under 19 million.
Right.
Nobody wants to know about that. And then it's not only that cost, but it's the cost of fighting. Like they've still got a lot in court. They use the Independent Complaints Review Authority. It's actually a $61 million a year business turning down ACC claims in this country. There's an entire 150 people that are paid 16.5 million between them, and their job every day is to turn people down. Right? So you can imagine they're already turning people down who've got injuries, because they do that. I had been through one other, ACC review process with my other son, who went kickboxing in Wellington and took a hit to the guts and got a hernia. And they tried to blame the hernia on him lifting a keg, because if you lift something, then you're not covered. If you get a kick to the guts, then you're covered. And then they tried to say he had weakness in the gut, and we went to a specialist, and he went, that's rubbish. He took the kick to the gut. I can see where it is. That's what's done it.
Yeah,
And
typical
I
insurance
know the
company thing.
doctors actually that are inside the system hate ACC paperwork with a vengeance and hate dealing with ACC.
Yeah.
And my doctor went, you'll never get there with the hernia. And I went, oh, yes, I will. And I got that over the line. So I'd already been through that
Good for you.
experience with
Yeah, good for
my
you.
other son when I went with the one with the vaccine injury,
Yeah.
which was much more intense. But anyway, it's 61 million they're spending every year on fighting those claims. We should just get rid of those 150 people. Sure, have your rehabilitation, getting people off, that's not a problem, getting people back to work if that's what they can do. But just point blank refusing people, like I know my son's cardiologist was extremely annoyed that they got another cardiologist to try and diss her diagnosis.
Yeah.
And she actually, and I will
Well,
repeat
Ali,
what Bailey
I've
said.
said
She
this
actually
forever.
said to him, I don't swear very often, but she said, beep, ACC,
Yeah.
how dare they actually get another cardiologist, a fellow colleague, to question my diagnosis. She was, and I mean, she's actually got a PhD in cardiothoracic surgery from Oxford University. So she's and has written heaps of peer-reviewed papers. So she's like, I can imagine that her nose was fairly out of joint when they grabbed some random cardiologist from Waikato to actually try and diss her. So then there's 18.6 million that is spent on hiring specialists to diss other specialists' diagnosis,
Well, but let
right?
me go.
And
But ACC has paid out millions of dollars now already to victims of this.
ah, they've paid out to 1,700 people. It's not That's not the payout to them, but the cost to them has been 19 million. But actually, I can tell you that I've got a friend in the vaccine injured community, and she's just got her permanent injury claim. She's a nurse who is bedridden a lot of the time. She's got POTS, and she's got heart issues, and she's got a bit of the neurological stuff as well, I think. And they deemed her to be 30% of what she was, because they do it by percentage when they do the permanent injury claim. My son's about to do his, by the way. And they deemed her to be 30%. Do you know what they paid her for losing 30% of her able-bodiness? $5,300. That was her permanent injury claim.
That's despicable.
She will never work as a nurse again, and she was a high-up nurse too, and
Oh
she'll never
my.
work as a nurse again. And they paid her $5,300 for 30% of her able-bodiness gone.
So what are we
It's
left with?
just pittance.
So
It's
Ali,
absolutely pittance.
Ali, what are we left with in this country? A country who perpetrated this horrific thing on its people, and represented by the former prime minister, whose name I care not to mention, and
Yeah.
both two former prime ministers actually, but one in particular. Where do we go from here? We have a new government. We have this corrupt,
We
empty
have
COVID
to get
inquiry.
ordinary people from small parties, good community people that don't want to be politicians into parliament. And we actually need to get good people in there who aren't part of the machine, who are not going to give in, who are not going to be lobbied to change their mind, who are actually going to stand in the truth. That is the only way I see it, is to get people inside the building who will stand in their truth. Now,
Well, that's a tall order. We've had a few people try. It's a tall order,
it's a tall order, but I'm stepping up to the plate. I'm going with New
good.
Zealand Outdoors and Freedom, and I'm standing for New Zealand Outdoors and Freedom.
Well, that's
With
great to
Sue,
hear.
with Alison Pavlovich, who's a taxation expert, and
Okay.
we've just got a whole lot of more people coming on board that we're going to announce. And I don't really particularly want to do it, Manny, but what are we going to do? What's it going to be like for our grandchildren if we don't get in there and change it, or
So
get in there and make it hard for them to
you
bring
raised
stuff
something
in?
very dire. We're a small country. We have what, 5 million people here, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by oceans. We were a sequestered laboratory for a fascistic approach to population control with this jab and all the stupid measures that they did. And it's like we're fighting for our life here.
We are. This is a really a good against evil fight, and I just believe we just have to stand in the truth, and we have to stand up. And
I
I
mean, I
mean, I
can't.
don't know
I'm
what
trying.
else, because I just think that, I
I'm
mean,
trying
I
not to.
just
I'm trying not to be over dramatic about it, but I look at they have created such a terrible thing here. They divided the country. They
yeah.
brainwashed all these people. They foisted something unnecessary, and now we know how dangerous this thing. The jab is dangerous.
I mean, I can
It's not the
see,
only dangerous thing of all of it,
yeah.
but it's dangerous.
I
Okay?
can actually see what's happening now, even in Parliament and with dealing with TV. I got interviewed for TV1 on the day it came out, on the day the actual what do you call it? Royal Commission, on
Yeah.
the day the
Really,
report
yeah.
came out.
Yeah.
They rang me, they interviewed me, and it's not gone to air. It was going to go to air tonight, but they've
Yeah.
decided they're not going to cover the story anymore, because she actually said to me that they were in Parliament and they decided there wasn't anything new to report on it. Because what's happened now is they're just doing their little to and fro thing, their little to and fro. Oh, the December meeting, and oh, Chris Hipkins did have it, and such and such did have
Yeah.
it,
No,
but they're completely not over the target.
yeah.
They
No, they're
actually willfully hid safety information,
exactly.
and then they redacted that they'd willfully
Yeah.
hidden it. And I have sent it, it's with the National Party, because Maureen Pugh got hold of me yesterday, and I gave it to her and said, give this to Simeon O'Connor. This is the 17th of August. This is what they did. Find out who put the orders in. And that will
No,
be the end of your opposition, and show that they actually hid safety data. Do you think they'll do it?
no, no. Listen, I knew.
Winston Peters
I
knows.
so
I've
here
posted it all over
so
his
here's where
wall.
we go. Was it even appropriate for anyone to engage with this commission with their so-called inquiry? I felt myself personally, but this may be reflective more of my personality. I felt it was a complete useless waste of time. I wouldn't give them the time of day because I thought the fix was in. Period.
Absolutely. 700 pages and they couldn't say the word vaccine injury? 700 pages?
So they're going to
Apart from the
whitewash.
people's
So
reports,
they're
you
going to
know,
whitewash everything, cover everything up. Nobody's going to be held accountable,
the front page.
except I hear that there is a legal thing afoot that is trying to bring these people to account. I don't know if you know anything about that. I hear
Yeah,
there's an
I do
initiative.
know a little bit about that, and I won't say anything about
Yeah,
that now, but I believe that that and other legal things need, the only way here is to go after them. The
yeah,
only way is to go after them legal, and the evidence is actually there. And in New Zealand, of course, Manny, with the ACC laws, that makes it hard for, say, like me to go sue the government because
yeah,
ACC stands in the middle, but you could sue the government for actually lying and withholding information. I really
yeah.
think that what they're on now has got a judicial possibility. And I don't know whether there's, the only thing you can question on a royal commission is a judicial review, but you have to have questions for it. We had it once in our history when Erebus crashed into
An
the
article.
Air
Yeah,
New Zealand plane crashed into Erebus, and that was that had a judicial hearing because natural justice wasn't observed because they didn't warn the pilot that they were going to point the sticky finger at him, and so that went into a judicial review. But there are a couple of ways. It will take a civil case in New Zealand, I think, is the only way, a civil case against the government or against Pfizer or against, you know, I think I think really because you've got a useless weak ombudsman, you've got a useless weak health and disability commissioner, so that's not going to help you. So we're really, I think the legal paths now are actually the only paths to actually go down, and
do
hope
you
like hang that the jury that you get will listen to the evidence and not be brainwashed, you know.
and do you think our compatriots, our fellow citizens, most of whom the 82% signed up and got the two jabs and went along with the masking and everything, do you think they're going to say, you know what, just forget about it. Let's go, let's look forward. Let's not be bothered with this stuff anymore. What's the
I
feeling on the
think there's
street?
a great deal of people, and I've seen it, and that's what we've noticed with the tribute, is that we have noticed that there's quite a lot of people that going, I did it, wish I hadn't, never felt well since. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
Okay.
people that are now going, I wish I hadn't done that. I know I've got
Yeah.
some regrets around me with people that I know that have got it and gone, gosh, I wish I had just listened to you. Or I just wish that I had not done it. Because they're actually not feeling well and they know they haven't felt well since they did it. So there's a lot of people. I mean, we'll put it this way: MedSafe say that only 5% ever get reported to MedSafe say, and we've got 20,435 serious injuries as of October 2024, I think it was, my figures that I've got there. And if you, that comes out to 480,000, really, if you look at that only being 5%, the reality is probably nearly 500,000 people that have got some form of injury. And out of that 20,435, reports, I should say, that's reports, you should, you know, they're serious. They're serious. They're life-threatening, the incapacitation, hospitalization. They're not just a prick in the arm where something went wrong. And actually, when you look at it too, the likes of Casey, for example, she's on this week on the Tribute.
Mhm.
It's now been formally diagnosed that it went into her vein. So it was vascular. The injection went into the vascular system. So they've now diagnosed that that's what happened to her.
Yeah.
Well, they had untrained non-doctors sitting in tents jabbing people through their car windows. I mean,
Yep, I know they were on a mission. They did. It's hard to believe. But I guess the basic question is, can those around us who participated, are they going to stand with us next time they try to pull another event,
I think
or are
need
they
to
going to help us hold
unite.
them accountable for this? Or are they going
Yeah,
to, I mean, I don't know. This is where it gets, I mean, I'm going to say one thing too about the doctors. Again, these doctors who've been harassed, harangued, persecuted by the medical council, and they nobody can hold the medical council to account for anything. They sit above everything, apparently. They're immune to everything, except I've said we have to enlist patients of these good doctors to start making complaints, to start understanding what they've been doing
Yeah,
to
so
people.
that's my next step really is to take Bailey's issues and the doctors that misdiagnosed him. And I think that anybody that's vaccine injured that had a doctor, go back and find who that ED doctor was. If you had test results and he looked at test results and misdiagnosed you, because that's the thing, you can't fight till you've got diagnosis and
Yeah,
ACC accepted. Now my son is at the point now where I can go to the medical council and go after the doctors that
yeah,
misdiagnosed
yeah.
him. But I think also we need to unite. That's one thing that I've seen in this whole thing, is that sometimes, and because I police a lot of pages, I police the tribute pages and outdoor party pages and things, I see these people who are like me, not vaccinated, who chose not to, and they're snarking at vaccinated people going, stupid bastard, could have told you that, weren't willing to
Yeah.
listen to us, were you? So
Yeah.
when you're actually vaccine injured, I've been protecting these people by just, if I see someone that's nasty, I just remove them forever. It's like I take no prisoners. It's like block, delete any time you might try to make another profile. You won't ever get on this page again. I'll have you. So, like, and there's been attacks from both sides, from
Well, that's
people
the
that are actually
that's the
unvaccinated attacking
yeah.
people who are
Well,
vaccine injured. And
I
I'm
mean,
like,
but Allie,
no.
can you blame them? Can you blame them? I'll tell you one thing. I've had not one person on that side of the jabbed has said to me, "Hey, I'm really sorry for what you had to go through." And which I don't
I
want to,
they nobody around me does that.
not one person on that side has even done that. And I'm talking about family members too.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So this is
We're all suffering it.
the
Yeah.
consequence of that kind of division,
So
which
how do we fix that?
we have
Many,
to be bigger. We have to be bigger
yeah.
on our side than that. And we have to just stand and lead by example. I keep saying lead by example. Be as healthy and happy as you can be. Uh, talk. I think it's important to talk about the stuff that's happening. You know, people are suffering from these consequences of the jab, for one. Uh, the government, it goes back to me, I'm kind of a fulcrum person. Archimedes said, give me a lever and I can move the earth, or give me enough space and then a lever I can move the earth. Basic principles were overridden, were overturned.
Oh yeah.
Whatever justifies the overturning of fundamental basic principles? Really, nothing does, okay?
Nothing does unless
Nothing
you're in a
does.
totalitarian dictatorship.
Exactly, exactly. So
Um,
we experienced that. We experienced that totalitarian approach as a country. It was astonishing. All right. And
Yeah,
we're
so
suffering.
I'm into unity. I think if the vaccine injured pull together with those who didn't vaccinate, and then we pull in the people who've changed their
Yeah,
minds, we're actually in a position where we can know, you know what? No, we don't want that.
yeah.
And we don't want it again, and you're not going to do it again. Because now what's happened is with this report, and this is interesting, and you always have to look at the political play. It's like I said, throwing in about the August meeting, giving that to National to throw as a firebomb at Labor, because during an election year, they want to throw bombs at each other. They want to actually kill the opposition,
Yeah.
because they don't want you to vote for them. So they try to flesh anything out they can. Um, I think, we just we have to find a way to unite together, because I think if we all unite together, then we're actually starting to get to a point where we can push them. But it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. The media is another thing you see. The media is the
I'm glad you brought
interlocking
that up. That was
piece.
my next question. The next
The
question is
media
the
is the
media.
interlocking piece,
Yeah.
the interlocking piece between the general public finding out and like this little bit of, that's why that little bit of the inquiry that we've got to ride hard on that little thing about, because now I'm starting to see people going, oh, what? Our 12-year-old wasn't supposed to have it, so it's like,
Well,
you
when
can
you say the
see, so
media,
that
when you say
attracts
the
the people.
media, When you say the media, you mean the legacy media. I mean the main RNZ and
Oh,
TV,
oh yeah,
those, that kind of the
the
establishment
actual
media.
the actual main media. But what I was going to say about the just one other thing about the report is they've been recommended now to set up and put mandates into law. Like that report has actually recommended that they should set up and put the mandates into law now so when it happens again, people know what to expect. That was what they put in there. That guy Illingworth is a complete and
Are you
utter
kidding
beep,
me? Are you
like he
kidding
is
me? I
just
mean,
like, oh my
we're gonna
gosh.
have to face something like this again with these idiots. I mean, this is
Yeah,
terrifying,
so
actually.
and the other thing is now you put the political picture in that. National is not going to want to do that before the election, I believe. They're not going to want to put in the recommendations before the election because it will make that side lose if they do,
You mean
because
these
there'll be people that
recommendations
go, what?
for mandates? I
Recommend,
mean,
yeah, to put law, put it,
they
yeah, that's
actually
what,
put this in here. I can't even.
that's, yeah, okay, so
I
that's
can't
what's
even
in there.
process it, Ellie. I can't even process it right now. I
I
cannot
know.
because I'm telling you, we gathered at Parliament to protest the mandates. Remember, it
Yeah.
wasn't just it was the mandates,
Do you
right?
know what they said about the Wellington protest? They said there were 3,000 people there.
3,000.
Yeah.
What?
That's what the commissioners said. There were 3,000 people at the protest. You're actually dealing with an alternate reality there. Like these
Yeah.
people are not going to be helpful. So
Well, we're dealing
we
with
need to look for solutions.
liars
We
and
need solutions.
propagandists. Yeah. Well, I think that getting people to try to get into politics, good people, as you know, I'm a dual citizen. I came from America, and the
Yeah.
initial idea of the founders of the American Republic was that people in the community would go into politics as a sort of for a little bit of time to serve their country, and then they go back to their job. They didn't intend for politics to be a permanent profession. They never did,
No,
right?
no,
So
it's a civic duty.
it's become a permanent profession here and everywhere
Yeah.
pretty much, right? So we've got to take it back and say, hey, we want real people who know what the problems that real people are facing are to go in there, do their stint, like kind of like jury duty, a
Yeah.
longer jury duty, come back out and refresh it and do something that gives us a chance, I think.
We've also we've also not had anybody in there to ask the hard questions. And okay, Winston Peters has been asking some questions. He's mentioned the vaccine injury. Do you want to know the first time the words vaccine injury were actually uttered inside the New Zealand Parliament?
Tell me.
When my petition was presented for a Royal Commission of Inquiry into vaccine injury, it was the first time the word vaccine injury was uttered in our Parliament.
Well, good
And
for
so I
you.
can take that. I'll
Congratulations.
just give myself a little.
Congratulations to you. And Allie, I want to go
I've
back
still
again.
got the little video where the guy comes in with the gold scepter and puts it down, and they say the petition of Ali Cook calling for a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine. And that's what should have happened. There should have been a Royal Commission just into the vaccine.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so then it couldn't be, you know what I mean? Like I just, anyway, then Winston said he was going to run his totally independent inquiry. That's cool because in 2017, I remember him saying, oh, 1080 poison will be gone by lunchtime. And they threw that guy under the bus once he got in. Then 2020, it was get your jab. Then 2023, 2022, it was 5 minutes walking through Parliament for 5%, And then 2023, it was like, oh, I'm going to bring an independent inquiry. And now now the independent inquiry wasn't so independent and was actually a nasty piece of paperwork, nasty 700 pages of not even mentioning the word vaccine injury and referring to them as
So
was
Ali,
it
was it worth people making submission to that inquiry? That I want to ask you that. Do you think it was worth our participating in that?
I guess the watered down version of the people's part of that inquiry where their little stories are um is kind of like, I guess that's okay, but like 85% of the 31,000 submissions were against it, but it's not 85% of the people's story. They've got like lots of people going, oh, she was bloody wonderful and they were wonderful and
Yeah,
didn't they
yeah,
do quite a great job?
yeah.
But like it's not 85% that were against like it really is. So I mean, I don't know. That's the whole reason I did my petition, was not only because I thought this, because the terms of reference of the first petition didn't have vaccine injury in it, and I wanted to make sure that vaccine injury got there, but it was also because I collected 250 vaccine injury stories and all of the research, 1,600 pages. Well, that's up on the Parliament website. So one day when they're getting taken to court and they go,
Okay.
we didn't know,
Yeah,
I'll go, excuse me,
good.
my petition, excuse me. Here's a full 2 pages of Casey Hodgkinson. Here is the evidence she gave for my petition. Here is the evidence. Here is the letter from the Nairn family about the loss of their son and the injury of their daughter. Here is so the whole reason I did it was to make sure that those were documented onto the parliamentary website. And it's a little bit like that with the Royal Commission. I guess there's a sanitized small version of that, because with mine they got to give a whole page or two of what they wanted to say, whereas this is like sanitized, and they took no notice of, like, I mean, how they could have read the tag meetings and missed that August 17, because they wanted to miss it, because they're dishonest. And I do believe that Grant Illingworth has done a dishonest and shite job,
Yeah.
terrible job,
Yeah.
terrible job. I mean, I wrote to him the day he got that position, and I thought he was gonna. I told him about my petition, and I said, I can give you that 16. And he said, oh, that's just the kind of evidence we want to listen to, you know? Yeah. And then in the last few days before he closed off, when in September, when Chris Hipkins went on Mike Hoskins, I took out a small MP3 sample of what Hipkins said. And he said something along the lines of, there are matters to do with the safety around the COVID response that I cannot speak to because I'm under a court suppression order. And he said to Mike, and you are under that suppression, and therefore I cannot talk about it, and you cannot talk about it, and we cannot talk about it. And I actually put the transcript down and I sent it to Illingworth, and I said, what is this? Is this the Pfizer contract? Who's put a suppression order on him? And he was implying that the media had a suppression order on them. Well, how can you do a Royal Commission of Inquiry? You ought to get to the bottom of that. And he said, it's outside of my scope. And I said, okay, explain to me how that's outside of your scope. And he wrote back and said, I can't help you. And that was his last word to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, these people are criminals as far as I'm concerned, Manny. And one day, I hope they're held accountable all the way through. All the way through. And that's why I've done the things that I've done, like the petition, like keeping the log of everything that happened to Bailey. Because if you're ever in a legal battle, your lawyer will say keep the times,
Yes.
keep the dates that
Yeah.
everything, keeps what's said, gather the evidence,
Very
hold together.
critically important, really important to document this, to have this record, to produce
Yeah.
this wonderful program, The Tribute, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So to have done everything that you're doing is just really remarkable.
Well, I'm just a small part of the cog, but it's like what's happening with the doctors is just insanity. But I do believe that is to keep the other doctors in check.
Yeah, that's
I actually
exactly
think
right.
it's
Yes,
actually they're
that's
actually
right.
doing it to make examples of anyone that steps up above the pulpit.
Yeah.
Because you've still got people out there trying to be diagnosed. And the one thing that I did get from the vaccine injured community was that the doctor would look at the ground. Their doctor would look at the ground. Like when Bailey, it was the same. We saw the doctor look at the ground when the cardiologist went, you've got pericarditis, because
Ali, all I can say is that it would have taken just a few more voices of doctors at the beginning of this to
yes,
step up and say, this is what our profession's about. Early treatment, no one mentioned treatment was never even considered. Everything was a fait accompli. The jab was the final solution.
but then when you get
All we had to do was stand up for informed consent, caution, cautious, good medical approach. We would have stopped this in its tracks. But some of us were made examples and shown to them that if you speak up, this is what's going to happen. Except that if enough spoke up, we would have won the day. You
look at
gotta have,
England, look at England.
you gotta have the courage to stand up for Otherwise, you're not a doctor anymore. If you can't stand
Yeah.
up for being for principles of medicine, you're not a doctor. Okay?
No, that's
So
right.
become something else.
It's look at England where they all stood together. Now they're actually all 90% of them are going, nope, we're not having the flu shot. Like they're all
Good,
like,
great. Yeah,
because they
great. Yeah.
they just stood up.
The
They went
useless
to
flu shot.
mandate them and they just all stood up and went, well, we're you're gonna mandate us? Great, go look for a doctor because we're not working here. And they're just going to take their coats off and walk out. So they actually stuck
Yeah.
together. But I
Well,
think the
I would
doctors,
hope that doctors watch the Tribute. I'd like to see these other doctors, the rest of the 18,000 doctors minus the 30 who
yes.
spoke up, watch the Tribute and ask themselves a few questions. And maybe that'll jog them for anything else that comes down the pike.
Well, yeah, I'm going to submit Bailey's video to the medical council with the complaint.
Please, please do. That's
Yeah,
great. I'm
and
really
and
happy to hear
and and
that.
we'll get some of the others to
Yeah.
do it as well. Um, yeah, I just really think we have to find the solutions to get it out there to people, and that's where the tribute
Yes.
is kind of cool because it's not a whole lot of technical stuff or experts talking or anything. It's the human experience of a fully diagnosed vaccine injured person. So when you go fully diagnosed and ACC accepted, the ordinary Joe Blogs goes, oh, wow. Oh, you're really rare then. You're one of the really rare people. Like, oh, you know, it's like, because they can't go, oh, you cooker because it's like,
Yeah.
the cardiologist says that's what it is. ACC says stamp,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, 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 that doesn't, your group think doesn't work for us. So it's kind of, it's a powerful thing, a statement from a person
Yeah.
where that outside group think can't argue that, oh, it's all in your head. They can't gaslight because, hey, we diagnosed, we're ACC accepted. So live with that. Or
That's
as Casey says, you want to criticize me, come see my life.
yeah.
Come see how I live. And that, I mean, we've got, and I'm just dying to. One of my next emails is to Helen Patassis Harris, and I'm going to be sending her Casey's, and there she is, cartoonized with Sir Graham LeGros from the Milligan Institute while they went, she's a scam. Why doesn't she just get ACC? Shut down her give a little
Well,
page,
that person you
like,
mentioned,
and
yes,
now I'm gonna send it to them and go, hey, welcome, you feature in this week's episode.
well, and Ali, yeah, I think we have to let real people understand what's really
Yeah,
happened, okay?
yeah,
They got to accept the fact that their government and the trusted medical establishment did something, betrayed them. They betrayed them. They did. There's
yeah.
no way to get around that. I know it's hard. They gotta understand that. They gotta break
Ah,
that,
interesting on that point. Maureen Pugh, when she wrote to me, said she'd just spoken to a doctor who felt so let down reading that he wasn't supposed to vaccinate 12 to 17-year-olds with a second vaccine, that the safety information was omitted, and he was horrified. So there'll be some of them waking up out there. And the thing is, my son, what made me do the under 40s OIA, I did an under 40s OIA on, people presenting with chest pain. I think we discussed that last time. Um, and it's like, my son, I did that because my son rang me up for my cardiology appointment and went, Mum, you're not going to believe this. He said the whole waiting room is full of 60 young people. They are all like me, young males, maybe 12 upwards. They're all fit looking people and they're all waiting for the cardiologist. And then the funny thing was that Val, another one of our tribute people, at the
Mhm.
end of her video, she goes, I walked into the cardiologist's room and I looked around and they were all my age. And I thought, I'm not alone here. You know, the thing is that the cardiologists are at the cold front. And I know that those waiting rooms are full of young people. Now, she's never met my son. He's never met her. They were filmed on different days and they said exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding with the tribute. It's like the guy leant over Bailey and said, don't let this put you off your second shot. Well, Brett, one of the other tributes, Brent, he actually went, as he was leaving hospital after 2 days with pericarditis, the doctor said, don't let this put you off your second shot. Like they're using the same language. And we're starting to see these patterns of
Yeah.
like everyone going that the cardiologist waiting room is full of young people. And so it's kind of like,
Don't let this put you. Why? Because they were who was the danger? How many people died of COVID here? How many people had COVID? I mean, honestly,
oh,
what was the
it's
danger? What was
it
here
wasn't.
we get back to it was a complete snow job. And to hear
Yeah.
these people speak so despicably to someone who's got an action. Listen, if I gave as a psychiatrist a tablet of a psychotropic drug and somebody got a pericarditis or a heart attack afterwards, there would be questions like, "Hey, what's
Oh,
happening? We got to be. You can't. Don't give that thing again. I'm not going to take that medicine again. I won't give it to you again. Right? You know, wouldn't even think about it. Right?
and there's a psychiatry thread running through this as well. Quite a few of our tributes were referred to psychological treatment. And in fact, Casey, they gave her psychological drugs that then made her symptoms far worse and she had to go to hospital. Like they and Anne, she was fobbed off to mental health. They were fobbing them off to mental
Yeah.
health.
Yeah.
When they kept coming in, they were like, "Oh, you're mad. Go to mental health."
Yeah.
So like there's actually that thread is running really strongly through it. So they go, "Oh, you've been in here twice for anxiety now. We better send you off to see the
Well,
psychiatrist."
I loved your son's reaction to the anxiety. He said, "Anxiety. I'm driving a 60-ton truck. I'm a happy guy. I got a great wife or whatever partner. I'm not anxious.
Yeah,
This is
he
a
said
physical thing."
one thing you can't be is anxious when you're behind the wheel of
Exactly,
60
behind the wheel of a
tons.
60-ton truck, really. Anyway, well, Ali, thank you so much for coming on. I want to make sure you send me, if you haven't sent me already in the emails, the links to all the stuff, how people can get in
Yes.
touch with you, and keep up the fight. I think it is important we get the truth out, no matter how. Freud said something. He said something which is along the lines of the voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it eventually gains a hearing. In other words, truth will eventually make itself
Yeah.
manifest. And we
As
know
the
what to
little
do there.
song Little White Crosses says.
Little white crosses, yes. And
Yeah,
somebody
it
send me a
says to
link.
the truth has a way of rising, to the
Exactly.
surface it will climb. And I
There you
still
go.
think about that lyric in everyday life. The truth has a way of rising, to the surface it will climb.
Well, good. Give me the link to that song too for people, okay? So we'll
Yeah,
make sure we get it on
yeah.
there. And thank you so much. And
Thank you,
we'll get
Manny.
together in a little while and do an update and say hi to
Absolutely.
Linda for me and to Gayleen and all the people doing this great work, okay?
Thank you. And keep on fighting, people,
Yeah,
and share the tribute and
we
share
definitely are.
NZDSOS stuff and just get it out there. And, if we all stand together, we'll be a lot stronger.
Thank you so much, okay?
Okay. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye.